Good morning. This is Michelle Love with Dynamic Change, and you are listening to KPCA LP in Petaluma, a free range radio station. I hope that your morning is really going just quite lovely. And this show, what I do is I'm a certified wellness coach, self-defense instructor. I have a degree in psychology, and I'm a certified fitness trainer. And I use my background working within the wellness field and also in mental health to provide insight into a lot of the daily patterns that we deal with that affect our wellness, and how can we look at it a little different, how can we structure our lives in ways that allow us to have more ease and more flow within ourselves and just more satisfaction, and to help decrease stress. So if you would like more information on me, you can go to my website, which is dynamicchangewellness.com. You can also contact me through the website if you have something you would like problem solved on a future show, or if you have questions and want to have any dialogue of any sort. That's the way to do it. So today I'm really excited. I decided that talking about just kind of self-care would be a really good topic, because I feel like it is a challenging topic for us to usually approach in a way that we feel balanced in our life. I think a lot of times we are on a lot, we're working a lot. If we're parents, it's hard to find times to take a break and everything like that. And so I want to talk about it from a couple different angles of how are we managing our self-care. And so I'm going to give you a couple scenarios. I like to make up particular examples. Sometimes I make up fictitious names of, this could be someone's story and this is how they could approach it, kind of thing. So what I have found with particularly I'm going to start first with a mom's approach towards self-care. I am a mother, and I've raised more than one child, and I've also been a single mom. So I think it's really quite tricky to figure out how to find that balance. I think in society, women it's been presented their role, particularly as a mother and also in relationship, that in order to be seen as a really, the really encompassing the female role to the best extent possible, I think there has been a projection of we have to come last. That becoming, being the mother or being the wife or being the partner is what defines how well we are being a woman. And that's a really hard role to fill. I think there's not a lot of balance within that kind of idea. And I'm not saying that's the only idea that we've had in society, but I do think for a long time that was the viewpoint, that there was this huge amount of self-sacrifice that went into those two roles of being a partner or being a mom. And so I think it's important to kind of look at the ramifications of that, as far as how well, as a woman, have we been taking care of ourselves. And then I'll also look at it from my understanding of how it could affect also the masculine role in society, and also how are we modeling this for our kids. Because I personally do not want my kids to have this particular pattern of they come last. Their self-worth is defined by how much sacrifice are they giving, because it just uses up our energy level. It can affect our health. Like, these aren't healthy patterns. So As a mother, I think, like, let's say, for example, I'm gonna pick a name here, and I'm gonna pick a new name that I have not used. Let's say Violet. So let's say Violet is a single mom, and she's my made up person for today. And being in the single mom role can be quite strenuous when you're doing it all on your own. And let's just say that she lives far away from her family, so she doesn't have a lot of family that she could like ask, can you help me out, watch my kid today, so while I'm at work, or pick them up because school let out early and I have to work later. There can be a lot of ways that Violet can feel really overtaxed. And so to look at how can Violet look for support to facilitate her self-care by lightening her load, let's look at that a little bit. So first of all, Violet could recognize that there's often so many things on her plate to do within the day that by the end of the day, she is so exhausted that she feels cranky. I think feeling cranky and feeling is actually feeling dysregulated, or feeling stressed, or feeling angry, and striving for feeling balanced within yourself and feeling like you're able to get enough rest, I think is huge for our well-being. It's huge for our health. It's huge for our mental health. So how can she find support? So I think really maybe within the school system, they have like ways you can communicate with the other parents, or I always talk to the other moms in the schoolyard and tried to find someone that resonated with me with as a person, and I felt comfortable with them, and I liked more or less the parenting style of boundaries. We seem to mesh well, and make as many friends as you can with other moms and say, can we set up a system where maybe, once a week you pick up all the kids, my kid, your kid, and start developing a network of let's work together. And sometimes there's other single moms, and really facilitating some level of support of having their phone numbers, say, can I call you if something comes up? Because sometimes maybe you end up meeting moms where they're married, they have more support, and they can work with you, or it's another single mom and you have different days off, and you can kind of look at your schedules and say, I have this day available every week. If something comes up and you need something, you can call me, and they can do that for you. Or just working together is such a relief, and we need that relief. We need someone that we can lean into at times when we have a limited amount of people. We need to brainstorm who is a reliable, safe person that I can get some support from, so you're not just using yourself up and not able to take care of yourself. So I think that's a really valuable thing to look at. Sometimes there are, I always networked as much as possible. When I talk to other moms, I would just ask them, oh, do you have a teenage kid that is really together, that babysits? Or, I always had like several babysitters, and I would ask the babysitters that were just phenomenal, do you have friends? And so I always had a lot of babysitters. I always communicated with other moms. So for Violet, I would recommend that they have as many babysitters available as possible, because emergencies do come up. So then you have that in place. And then you also have as much communication with other moms as possible, where you're rotating, play dates, rotating pickup from school, and just have as many things set up as possible. And the thing is, when you have a large network, it's really helpful because it takes time to find people that you trust. It takes time to find situations where you feel really comfortable. Like, let's say you really need someone to just have your kid for a night. There is an emergency coming up, or you're really sick and your kid's fairly young, and it would really help if maybe they were just able to be at a friend's house for the night. So getting to know people, hanging out with them, doing those play dates, getting to know if they are married, getting to know the whole family unit, so you feel like your kid's really safe. You feel like your kid, you know that your kid's going to be comfortable, you're going to be comfortable, and always working on developing that support structure for yourself, I think is really vital. And and just have that be a huge focus in your life, and then that way you have many options, and always asking them, who do you like as a babysitter, or who is another, mom that when you meet people that you're so comfortable with, pick their brain. Is there anyone else that you know? Because if they're like you in a lot of ways, where you can trust that parenting structure and them being a really safe person, they might know other people. And finding a way to barter. Sometimes you can say, well, I can help you out on this day so you can do your shopping more easily without the kids, or something like that. It's almost like a bartering system of energy, of time. I can be there for you so you can do this, or I can, help make dinner this night. I mean, you could really network together. I have a very close friend of mine. Her mother was a single mom, or became a single mom, and then she teamed up with someone else, another single mom, and they raised their kids together. And it was extremely helpful. And they were related, but kind of remotely. And so I think those kinds of techniques, and a lot of cultures do those kinds of things, but I think they're a really intelligent way to support each other. It does take a village. So sometimes, if we don't have a big family unit, or you don't come from a big family unit, let's say Violet didn't have that, and she doesn't come from, that kind of cultural support, I think it's really important to learn from that type of cultural support, how, like in the Latino communities, I think they really work together, and I think that's really wise, and that we need to kind of look at what would help everything flow in a way where we have more self-care, and Violet can feel some relief. So looking at Violet, she has developed, she's my imaginary person today for us to talk about self-care as a single mom. So Violet has connected with many parents, and she always makes an effort to know all the parents that the kid is really close to, like their kid. And that's something I always did, and it really did pay off, because you have this groundwork of safety for your kid. So if your kid's spending time in someone's home, you're really familiar with kind of the flow of that home and everyone in it, and it just puts your mind at ease. And I continued to do that, and I would recommend for Violet, as long as possible, even up through teenager years, as much as you can, to know the people that are part, even if it's kind of on the outskirts of the kids' environment, as much as possible. Know the teachers as much as possible. If there's any way Violet has time to work in the school a little bit, that can be a really helpful tool. I did that, and it allowed me to not only be there for my kid. I only went once a week, but it helped me provide support for the school system, which I felt good about. It helped me be there for my kids, so my kid felt I was very available. And it also helped me get to know all the other kids within the classroom. And so it just allowed me to be close to my kids' friends. And I think that can be very helpful. So if Violet follows that type of pattern where, maybe they're able to even just 1 hour be volunteering at the school to help the teacher and do certain things, it really keeps your foot in the door to be able to have a connection with your kids' friends, with the teacher. And this really helps as they get older, as much as possible, to have some sort of foot in there. Then not only can you have better communication with your kid, be able to see what your kid might need, your kid may feel more support and closer to you, but you can continue to lean into having connections for your own self-care by working as a team with other parents. And the more self-care that Violet has for herself, then she's going to be able to parent better. She's going to be able to handle the stresses that come up in life in a way where she's not depleted, where she doesn't feel cranky because she's so depleted. She's not going to get sick as easily. She's going to have time to have some energy to work out, to cook in a way that she feels nourished, and she can nourish her child's diet in a way that feels really balanced. There's enough time to do all the errands and take care of the home and work and juggle all these many, many, many things. So another thing I would like to talk about with our imaginary scenario with Violet, the single mom, is sometimes life can be such a strain that there is a need to look at how is Violet handling her boundaries for herself. And so this is the next level of self-care I would like to talk about, is realistically looking at, I would recommend to Violet, really looking how much energy do you have? Like, what makes you feel like you're putting out too much energy? And again, looking at how is Violet quantifying her vision of herself of being a good mom. So is Violet thinking, wow, in order to be a good mom, I have to take care of my kid every moment and have not put up enough boundaries for myself to have time to maybe take a bath, have time to throw in or watch a video for exercise, right? To take half an hour to just work out or whatever it is. What are the boundaries for self-care for a single mom that maybe no one is available, and she's new to town, and maybe she hasn't made connections and doesn't have support, she doesn't have family in town, and it's taking her time to meet parents and facilitate that groundwork. So I think an important thing to look at is how we establish our boundaries for ourselves to, maybe say no, and to say no to our kids. I think that's a really important one, of having boundaries that Violet maybe tells. Maybe Violet has a 5-year-old boy named Sam. So Violet's kid, Sam, that's 5 years old, maybe she keeps letting Sam know, at the end of the day, I noticed I need some time to relax from all the busyness that I've been doing, and it helps me feel calm. When we model this for our kids, it is so valuable because it starts to teach them to pay attention to how they feel. And if they're starting to feel kind of off-kiltered and dysregulated and cranky, or sometimes kids are just so overstimulated, like they just might feel like crying because they're like sponges. They feel all the stress that everyone in their environment is holding. And we got to show them that that's not the way to be. It's unavoidable at times, but the way to be is to work towards feeling regulated. So she can let Sam know, when we come home from school, mommy's going to take 20 minutes to just have a cup of tea and sit down and relax and not talk, and just like quiet time. So valuable. So she's modeling to Sam that working towards feeling regulated is the goal. Here's a way to do it. And she can also, and she's modeling to Sam that she's taking care of herself, that she is doing self-care. And she could say, okay, here's Sam, here is the egg timer. I always recommend these little timers that the kid can be in charge of. Here's your timer for, let's set it for 20 minutes. And you can have that quiet time in your room, and you can leave the door ajar so I can kind of see you or check on you. But, you can decide what you would like to play with in your room quietly, so you can just have some quiet time as well and see how you feel. Maybe we'll check in at the 20 minutes and see how we're feeling, see if we need more time, see if you want a snack at that point. And so having that quiet time is really important. And then maybe during that time, Violet decided she was going to do a quick workout, do it like a HIIT workout. She has a little YouTube person that she loves. And so she decided, okay, working out feels good. Having that cup of tea feels good. Maybe even a 20-minute nap feels good. But really looking at what does she need. And then after that, this is after school every day, then Violet can be like, okay, now I'm going to provide a snack for Sam, and then I'm going to give Sam, we're going to work on Sam's homework. So then Sam has his little snack, and then it's set homework time. And yes, at 5 years old, I think sometimes they have something. Hopefully not, but it can be, just a page. I used to love to get these little workbooks where they could practice their penmanship, or just a simple little mind thing for 5 minutes. Depending on the age, they might have something to attend to, but just something really simple, not too much, because I think school is a lot for kids, and you don't want to overdo it. But you can give them that, or it can just be a relaxing puzzle if he's too young and that's not appropriate. Maybe it's just a puzzle. There's just something calming, something a little focusing if they don't have a task that they need to do in that moment. And or they could also have, if they don't have schoolwork, say, okay, now I want you to tidy up your room, and once it's tidy, you can let me know. You can put up the things you were playing with, and then we'll have dinner. So then maybe Violet goes and does dinner, but there has been this transition time. There has been this focus for Sam of something he can do to be responsible, whether he's at an age, maybe he's 8 or 9, and there is a little bit of homework, that they get their homework done. If they don't have homework, they can do something kind of constructive with their time, like pick up their room. It's something that's helpful, gives them a little responsibility, and then while mom is cooking, or maybe she's teaching Sam how to cook, and Sam can do a little bit of the prep work and help learn how to be supportive. So it's not like mom, Violet, is in charge of every little aspect. There's this like disbursement of everyone being in charge of a task, everyone kind of working together, so that it's not all about the mother being in charge of every single little moment. There's got to be a way to have the kid be in charge of themselves in a way that the mom is comfortable with, that is directed and chosen by Violet, but a way to start dispersing that energy. So it's not about her just using herself up to do every little thing. So, dispersing the chores and giving that space energetically and emotionally, so that Violet has her own kind of like bubble space for a certain amount of time to decompress, and allows Sam to also decompress, is very helpful. So again, my name is Michelle Love, and today I am talking about self-care. I'm talking about how do women find self-care as a mother? How do men find self-care when they, in our society, I think they are really encouraged to be so strong all the time, and I really appreciate the masculine for its strength, but also like how is everyone allowing themselves to have self-care within their life, and how do the kids develop those skills and everything else. So back to, we'll finish with the mother's role as a mom with self-care. And today you are listening to KPCA LP in Petaluma, and this show is called Dynamic Change. And so my imaginary person, Violet, and the imaginary scenario I'm making up, she has her kid that's 5 years old, Sam, little boy. And so for Violet to have self-care, her identity as a mother is not that she has to sacrifice herself in order to be a good mom, but she's finding ways to disperse kind of the energy within that dynamic of their lives in a way that Sam has things to be in charge of at a very young age, like tidying up his room. Maybe he is strong enough to, help move the help with the kitty dishes. Maybe they have cats, and there's little tasks that he can do. He can brush the cat gently. There's certain things that just kind of give Sam some responsibilities, and it's not about the mom, because it's a pattern. I've done this pattern, and this pattern of feeling like you have to do everything yourself every moment. And it's a really debilitating pattern. So I always strove to give tasks or space and time to my kid to give me space. And I think it can really, really, really pay off when you have a lot of boundaries around it of what the kid's allowed to do, and you've given them your choices of what you're comfortable with, but just giving yourself space, because I think we all get overstimulated. So Violet's given herself space by giving her kids certain activities and the egg timer so they can be in charge of themselves. She's modeled that when she feels stressed out, that she wants to model for her kid how to self-care to feel regulated, whether she needs to take a nap, whether she's going to take some time to herself and say, this is your time to yourself to play while I sit down, or I'm going to go stretch, or she's going to realize that she feels completely tapped out, and she's going to call one of those moms. She did make some friends and say, hey, can you take Sam for maybe 2 or 3 hours this evening, because I'm just feeling really burnt out, and I realized I need to take a bath. I need to take care of myself. Can we do that? Sometimes there's a neighbor that you feel really comfortable with, them really well, and you just reach out and ask for some help, rather than letting yourself get to this place where you're so depleted that you could get sick, that you just feel, used up every day, and just completely overstressed. So really looking at how you can shift and change that. And so the other thing I want to speak to that I think applies to everybody is, how much do we say, I can't do that? Like, no. It doesn't have to be the harsh no. But how often are we asking for what we need, for one thing, and letting things go that maybe could wait? So let's say that Violet does not have too much support. Like I mentioned, let's just say, Violet did just move there. She knows very few people. Then maybe her only level of support in that moment is to try to create space for herself, right? There's not too many people she can ask to take Sam for any amount of time. There's not relatives. So, and she's just has one babysitter. They're only available at certain times. So maybe the way she can provide self-care is to have really strong boundaries and say, Sam, no, tonight what we're going to do is I need you to just take some time to play for yourself. I'm not going to take you, like, let's say Sam had this particular activity he had been asking to do all week, and Violet just realized that they just, that was supposed to be the reward for Sam listening all week. And Violet's like, wow, I'm not feeling real good. I had a really intense work week. I'm feeling really run down. I feel like I could get sick. And she doesn't have a solution. So Violet says, okay, Sam, I think I need to replan our day, because you did listen all week in this one way I asked you to, and you do deserve that reward. But I really feel like I need to shift it, because mommy's realizing I really need to rest. It was a very busy week for me. So I'm going to give us some other options. And so maybe she decides, instead of taking him to, let's say the reward was supposed to be going to the movies that night. And this is because he was helpful all week, and they do a stickers chart system, and he was really cooperative and in charge of himself. And so she says, this is the new plan, and that way I can reward you, but I'm going to do it in a way where I can also take care of myself needing to rest. So she decides, we're going to go to the store, and we're going to get some treats. We'll get special kind of popcorn. Maybe you can have a little ice cream as a little treat. And maybe I'm just going to buy sandwiches, because I realized, getting something simple, pre-made from the deli section of the store, and a couple nice little nutritious, but kind of a treat snack, allows Violet to not to feel the pressure of having to be perfect and cooking the meal and the whole 9 yards. And she says, and then we're going to come home, and I'm going to, let's say she has the ability to rent a show off the TV, and say, we're going to find a lovely show, and we're just going to relax and watch the show at home, because mommy doesn't have the energy tonight just to go and do, drive and sit in the movie theater and be there. That feels like I need something a little simpler, and this will allow me to rest more fully. And so she modified it. So that way Sam still gets the reward, because he did earn it, but she's also able to tune into herself and realize that going out, driving further to the movie was a lot, because then she's concerned about how is she going to do dinner before that, and she's just being home and just being able to lay down on the couch or wherever they're going to watch the show. She could also set up, maybe in the living room, she can set up a nice, like the fort. My kid loved forts. Maybe Sam loves forts too, right? And just lay down the blankets and the pillows and lay on the floor. Maybe she really needs to lay on the floor and just breathe and rest, and her kid can sit there, and have their own pillow little fort, and have his little snacks and everything. And maybe she can even take a nap. And he has this magical little fort that's been developed in his snacks, and he has his little sandwich from the deli. She didn't have to do anything. How lovely is that? So, changing situations that will provide more self-care, adjusting the plans, sometimes just saying, no, I can't do that particular activity. Or sometimes work may say, can you work an additional day? And the self-care that Violet needed was to really tune in and realize, no, I cannot do that. I need the money, but sometimes you really have to say no. Sometimes if you're really starting to feel run down, you might really need to call in sick so you don't get sick. Like really starting to look at, like, what are we willing to do to make our self-care be the first thing? Because when we do self-care first, then we're going to be more successful at everything that follows that, because we're going to be more like 100% within ourselves. So Violet is, instead of thinking the way I am the best mom or feeling validated as a mom is by overextending, by always putting her needs last. We shouldn't put our needs last ever. It should be our needs first, and then finding a way to also be able to take care of the kid and meet all the kids' needs. But if you do not meet your own needs first, you're just, it's really serving no one. And I think we just have these patterns in society that are worth letting go. And so any person, any we are all just people, and the roles should just be the same. So a really big thing that I think is challenging is, as a mom, there's a lot of mom guilt that goes with being a mom. And I don't think it has to be that way, but I think it has been a pattern that was kind of built into the American society, that it all ultimately falls on the mom to, if I think internally as a mother, the maternal instincts are that we have to protect our kids at all costs. Like if our kid gets hurt, it's like you feel like often that's your responsibility, that you did something wrong. And it's impossible to protect your kid from life. Things are going to come up. Your kid is going to get hurt at times, and it's not because you have a deficit. It's because that's how life is. Unfortunately, but we learn. It's all a learning thing. So when things happen, our children learn from that thing that came up. And so I think that letting yourself off the hook and striving for boundaries that teach your kid how to be safe, so when your kid's not around you, they are cognizant and mindful of safety. But there's only so much you can do. So allowing yourself to be human as a mom and just say, okay, I can only do my 50% of this situation, and that is 100% effort. There is another 50% of how the life and how things happen kind of within life that we can't handle. If we try to overcompensate and do 75% of a situation, where not only does it make us imbalanced, but we're not allowing maybe the kid to learn in a particular situation. We're not asking for help. We're not allowing for balance within our lives, where we're always trying to do this 100%, the 75%, when we really should try to find a more moderate type of reaction to all of the different situations and responsibilities within our life, and find more of a medium balanced place. Because I think within the American society, I think workaholism is huge. I think that our self-care is often last. And so just trying to find a moderate flow in your life where you're allowing the responsibilities to be dispersed. And when I did management, that's the only way to survive as a manager. I did supervisory work too, and I would train these managers, and I had to, in order to not completely tank within my job, I had to disperse the responsibility as much as possible and focus on training and focus on, going slow enough within myself to, rather than doing all the work I knew I could do really fast, I had to stop and train everybody. So everybody could take that load and do that work. So I wasn't trying to do everything. So it's the same kind of concept for Violet. Learning when to say no, learning when you need to adjust something, model for our kids. This is how you do self-care. The goal is to feel regulated, calm, and happy. And if we are not feeling happy, something needs to be adjusted. And sometimes the only thing we can adjust is saying, no, I can't do that, but this is what I can do, and change it. So saying no sometimes is the only chess piece you have in your life. Sometimes we just have so limited resources for a few moments that then we have to really tighten up our boundaries and really get honest and say, this is all I can do. And maybe it's very little, and that's okay. And feel good about that. You know, when you're on the the plane and they have that sign that says take care of yourself first, put the mask on first, it's really true. So sometimes we have to really look at our expectations, and the demands we put on ourselves sometimes are pretty harsh. So just really looking at what we can handle, and then also looking at what balances out our kids the most, is so valuable. And sometimes we need to really look at how many activities are balanced for us, balanced for our kids, and how can we have an enriched life, but in a way where we feel regulated and we feel calm. So again, my name is Michelle Love. You're listening to KPCALP in Petaluma, and this show is Dynamic Change, and I am talking about self-care. And so I just finished with my imaginary example of a single mom, Violet, and her kid Sam, that's 5 years old, of some examples of how they could stay regulated, how Violet can support self-care within their life. So now I would like to move to a man's experience, or the masculine experience in life. So not that I know everything about that, because because I haven't lived a man's life. But what I have heard from men that I have known that I found very valuable, that is that I think the expectations placed on men is to be really, really, really strong, and vulnerability isn't something that comes easy to them. I think particularly in, at least I can speak to the American culture, that their definition, so we have these societal definitions of that I think are not always well-rounded, because they're extreme. So if there is this being a good together man is equated with power, with being in charge all the time, with being the leader, you know, where does that allow them to be human? Where does that allow them to have space for themselves to feel vulnerable? How do they feel when they're forced to feel vulnerable? Let's say they get hurt or they get injured. You know, how much of a struggle is that going to be? Are they going to be so upset and frustrated with themselves because that doesn't equate, when in a dysfunctional definition of the masculine, that they're not the best man if they are not able to be the superhero, this, you know, in this way. And so self-care for a man might really look like how taking time off might look like being able, when they're not feeling well, to ask for support, but before they get really run down. Like how much time are they allowing themselves to decompress, for one thing? Because from what I can tell, and this is from my limited, you know, experience, it seems like men are on a lot as well. You know, like my single mom example, Violet, men seem like they are, you know, really big doers, and that's great. But also, how balanced are they with their self-care of allowing themselves to be gentle with themselves? Like, what do they do? What do they do for their self-care? Are they exercising? Are they taking days off where they just get to not have so much of a schedule, maybe taking a nap, maybe maybe doing something that just feels good, feels a little indulgent. Maybe they go get a massage, or maybe they allow themselves to just go for a day where they go hiking and just they don't have to be responsible and so goal focused. You maybe, I'm assuming, these are my assumptions, they could be off, but I feel like men are looked at in a way where they have to be pretty driven and pretty strong. And I think being gentle with yourself is so important. You know, maybe having a hot tub, or having taking a bath, or just doing something where they get to receive, maybe taking themselves out that day to lunch and just allowing someone to bring them the food, allowing themselves to just feel like unproductive and allow that to feel good. I think a lot of times we feel like if we are not productive and doing things all the time, that we're like this slacker. And it's a harsh expectation for the self. So just looking at, and so let's say, I'm going to give an example for work. I was talking to a dear friend of mine and we were talking about work, and there was these frustrating patterns in my friend's work environment. And I said, with communication, when I need something to happen, and I was thinking about when I was a supervisor, the way I would communicate is if it was really important, and I really needed something to happen, that then there's no reason to really advocate for that. So to me, if I needed something to happen, so this could be useful for a man at work, a woman at work, anybody, but the kind of communication of these are the solutions that I know would help this dynamic, let's say at work. And let's say Tom is my imaginary man at work, and he's really frustrated because the manager's not listening, and the work is not very distributed in a way that is causing efficiency at his job, and he's starting to get more and more frustrated, and his boss is not willing to really listen to him. And then Tom's feeling upset at work, so he can't, and the stress is not good. So how can Tom take care of his needs, his own self-care in the work environment? So what I would recommend is communicating in these ways. And this is what I was relaying to my dear friend too. And so I would relay this to anybody, man or woman, but this kind of assertive, very direct, problem-solving kind of communication of Tom could really brainstorm, this is what I know would help facilitate more efficiency and get rid of this frustration within the work environment that is affecting his regulation, his feeling regulated and happy within himself, which will help take care of his own feeling happy, feeling regulated, feeling like he's taking care of himself. So this is a level of self-care. So he could come up with the ideas of what would help. And so he's coming with solutions to his boss, and he's saying, look, these are the things I can do that would really help this environment, this efficiency issue, and these other issues need to be addressed. And for the well-being of the environment at work, so we're not having toxicity and stress and everything, I'm calling on you as my boss to address these other issues. And I would like to meet every week on Friday to communicate how much progress we are doing with this situation, so we can keep reassessing until this is functioning in a more efficient manner and a happier manner, because I don't come to work to feel stressed out and frustrated. And I am willing to do these things that I know will help, and I will do these things. And I need to work with you and I need you to back me up and support me because I know you want to have a work environment that is efficient, for one thing, for good business, and that you want your employees happy, because the happier we are, the more we are able to work better. And I know that you want to have this kind of environment. It just makes sense. So I'm calling on you as my boss to support this, and be insistent. And that's what I've always done. And it does work if you're clear and you're concise and you're problem solving and you're trying to be as positive as possible, but it's a little, you will not back down. So your boundaries are so strong that you're like, this is what needs to happen. And it's clear and it's calm and it's direct, but it's insistent. It is your boundary saying, I will do this, but I also need this from you. You know, if we communicate like that in real life as much as possible, and I also feel this is a very powerful thing for us to model for our kids. And this is something I always strove to do, was to communicate boundaries of, I really need some space right now. I love you so much. You are so amazing. You're my favorite person. But I know that I need to have some time to myself right now, and I can talk to you in an hour. It's not putting aside your emotional and physical and energy level needs in every moment. Sometimes people have to wait. Sometimes people need to understand that your needs, you need some accommodation, that you will not settle, that everyone can keep working at it and adjusting and kind of seeing how much they can do, and you can keep compromising and adjusting, but things have to happen that are for the greater good of everyone's well-being and self-care. And that is a really something that is okay to ask for, something that is okay to insist for, and keep saying, this is what I'm willing to do. But when you ask me, when Tom's like at work, my imaginary person Tom says, when you ask me to do this, I feel very stressed out. That's more than I can fit into my work day. It's not within my job description, but let's get together and see how we can develop a plan that respects what I can do, what feels, within my job description, and how maybe we can restructure the responsibilities of our team effort here in the office with everybody, and really push for that agenda. I was an advocate for my coworkers for many years. They asked me to do that at my job that I worked at for a long time. And I think this kind of approach to life and approach to a work environment is really valuable, that people feel heard, that you're looking at what they need and problem solving, like how can we be more efficient with each other and have boundaries and ask for what we need and have a forum, but to push for it. Don't just settle, don't just let it stress you out and make work this awful place. Like, how can we actually have boundaries, take care of ourselves, be assertive, and not give in and just think this is how it has to be, and there is no self-care within the situation. So, talking about self-care within our relationships, I've done a lot of that with talking about boundaries, but just being insistent and constantly bringing it up in this way. I really appreciate you. So often saying something positive. I really appreciate you for doing and being this way. Whether it's your kid, whether it's your mate, whether it's at work, whether it's in your friendships, I really appreciate you. But then also communicating, I've realized that when I try to overextend to meet your needs in these ways, that it's dysregulating for me and stressful. So I'm going to offer to just do what I know I can handle. And then we can brainstorm of how we can keep adjusting that additional amount of things that are kind of beyond that. And Sometimes you have to adjust a time frame for when something happens. Sometimes you have to say that can wait till next week. Sometimes if you're at the job, you have to say, I want to have regular meetings until this feels better, and push for it. Why not push for it? And I think sometimes people just don't understand that if you aggressively, in a positive way, keep going after the solution, that this is going to help everybody. But I think sometimes we're afraid to have a voice. We're afraid to, we look at ourselves like we're not going to be the best mom if I put my needs in front of the kid. I'm not going to be the best employee, or whatever it is, or I'm not worthy of that self-care. I don't love myself enough to have that self-care, or, and a lot of times that is what it boils down to. How do we feel about ourselves? So really looking at pushing yourself to feel worthy, even if it's a struggle, of having more self-care in your life, and what kind of boundaries will that need. But I think really my example of being a supervisor, looking at your life, you're the supervisor of your life. How can you delegate? How can you release and kind of let the energy flow, as opposed to pushing forward like a locomotive and there's no flow? And there's a lot of people that talk about the flow and the TED Talks and everything else. And it's really what I am talking about in some ways. Our energy, our balanced self does not flow very well when we are just driven in a way that is imbalanced. The way to have flow and ease in our lives, and to access all your brilliant ideas, to access your highest energy level, to access your highest level of happiness, of health and everything, is to have this flow and this release, and realizing that the flow requires this balanced structure, this base that is bigger than a power structure of just one person doing it all in every moment, and putting that pressure and expectation just on themselves. So that the whole image goes from this, this one thing standing erect in the middle, taking the brunt of everything, that has no flexibility. It doesn't bend in the wind. It doesn't know when to rest, when to take the bath, when to release. It goes to kind of this flowing, round, circular feeling of feeling when you need to have calmness, take a break, breathe, exercise, ask for help, be very direct with what you need. So it's a whole nother way of relating and visualizing the situation. So I'm very grateful for today, and what a beautiful day it is outside. And you have been listening to Dynamic Change. My name is Michelle Love. I would like to read about one of the shows we have here at KPCA-LP in Petaluma. And this show is called Nonviolence Radio. I love the title. Alternating Mondays, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., hosted by Stephanie Van Hook and Michael Nagler. Nonviolence Radio explores the power of nonviolence worldwide through interviews and news. And I think that's really a powerful topic, because I think our news and kind of a lot of what gets focused on is often negative things. And I think being able to focus on ways of relating that are positive, that are nonviolent, that have love, that have joy, that have connection, that we have beautiful, beautiful experiences in life all over the planet every day and with people. And it's really helpful to connect with that. So I really, that sounds like a very helpful show to tune into those types of things that are happening in the world. So I appreciate your time today. Again, this is Dynamic Change. I do a show every week at 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. And I hope your day is absolutely amazing. And I hope you are doing a lot of self care and patting yourself on the back for all you accomplish, and patting yourself on the back when you stop accomplishing, and just take care of yourself. Thank you so much. You take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I look forward to speaking to you again. And thank you. Bye bye.